If you need a perfect snapshot, an ideal object lesson in everything that's wrong with American politics in the third decade of the 21st century, that illustrates in striking detail why we are a nation of fools for still clinging to the same two political parties we have had since 1860, this Senate race in Pennsylvania provides a pretty good one, I think. Has there ever been a race for such a high-profile office between two more ridiculous, more unappealing candidates? In this corner, you've got the wealthy liberal talk show host, and he's the Republican. And in the other corner, you've got a guy who literally has a broken brain. Seriously, have you heard this guy try to give a campaign speech lately? It makes your typical Joe Biden speech sound like the Sermon on the Mount by comparison. A 5-word sentence for this Fetterman guy is a roller coaster ride that lasts for about a minute and a half sometimes, and he manages to display the worst habits of both the president and the vice president, amazingly enough. He's got the Joe Biden habit of randomly screaming words, and he's got the Kamala Harris habit of only saying 1 or 2 words at a time with a very long, very awkward silence on both sides. And with Kamala Harris, the reason she does it is because she desperately wants to be interrupted by a round of applause that she never seems to receive because she doesn't deserve it, because she makes about as much sense as an owner's manual for a hand blender that's been auto-translated from Chinese into English. But with Fetterman, it's much worse than that. Fetterman does the very long, very awkward silences because he is trying to remember how to make sound come out of his face hole. And I'm not trashing the guy for having a stroke. It must suck a lot to have a stroke, especially at age 53. But dude, you can't be a United States Senator when you literally are incapable of uttering one sentence of coherent, cohesive English. Except, hell, maybe you can, provided your opponent is as big of a goofy douchebag as Dr. Mehmet Oz. Have you seen this commercial the guy's got out? The one where he's in the grocery store pretending to buy ingredients for something called crudité, which is apparently what fancy rich people call a fucking vegetable platter. If this is not the absolute worst TV spot in the history of political advertising, I am going to need you to tell me what the hell is. Hey, idiot. You don't connect with the average voter by pretending you are him, by play acting at being common when everybody damn well knows you're a rich asshole who probably hasn't seen the inside of a grocery store since 1997. But there seems to be a lot of that sort of cosplaying going on in this race. John Fetterman, if you encountered that dude out in the world somewhere, you might surmise, and not unreasonably, that he's got a background in the building trades or heavy industry, maybe long-haul trucking, some sort of physical masculine toil at any rate. He's got the shaved head, the goatee, likes to wear work shirts and hoodies, likes to show off his tattoos. You would never roll up on a guy who looks like that and think, this guy is a lifetime pampered trust fund baby who's never done an honest day's labor and never had one speck of dirt under his precious little fingernails. But it turns out that is exactly who John Fetterman is. In fact, his life story reads an awful lot like Bernie Sanders, but without all the Bolshevism. He's the son of an insurance executive. He's never known want or struggle or gainful employment for that matter. And he's ridden the same private school Ivy League pipeline that you pretty much have to ride if you want a career in national politics these days. He got his BA from the same private university his daddy attended. Then it was on to the University of Connecticut for his MBA. Then a couple of years at Harvard at the Kennedy School. Then you bounce around doing lame internships at the Washington think tanks for half a decade or so. And then boom! You are old enough to start running for office. And sure, maybe you haven't spent one single day living in the real world, but that's not important because now you've got all the credentials that are required for permanent membership in the Washington elite. But just like his role model Bernie, he manages to get himself elected the mayor of some shitty little town, and that's enough to get yourself a seat on the upward failure train. Mayor Pete can tell you all about that if he's not busy chest feeding the twins right now. So Fetterman matriculates to some statewide office or other, then he matriculates to lieutenant governor or whatever the hell he is now. And then, obviously, it's time to matriculate to the U.S. Senate, which you should not be able to do when you have got a broken brain and the oratorical skills of Mongo from Blazing Saddles. But when the other party, for some unfathomable reason, trots out a candidate as bad as Dr. Oz, well, then I guess all bets are off. And full disclosure, I pride myself on knowing more words than most people do, but up until last week, as God is my witness, I had never once heard the word crudité used to describe veggies and dip. My wife wants to make crudité, says Dr. Oz, at the beginning of history's most ill-advised political ad, but all the stuff is just too expensive because Joe Biden. Can you guys believe that? Bring it in, Dr. Oz. We got to talk. You better bring in your idiot campaign manager into the huddle, too. So here's the thing. The people of your state, they have had the beating heart ripped out of their energy industry. They've got purple-haired sex pervert teachers trying to trans their kids at school. In some cases, they are skipping meals so they can afford to fill their cars with gasoline to get to work. And you just opened your campaign by bitching about the price of asparagus and designer salsa? Hell, maybe Fetterman doesn't need the ability to speak in order to win this race. Maybe he can just point and laugh. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we don't tip our vegetables in anything but the blood of our enemies, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea, welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And do you remember about 5 or 6 weeks ago, when Dr. Anthony Fauci, patron saint of bumbling bureaucrats and enemy saboteurs, did the sort of soft opening version of his retirement announcement and said he probably would step down at the end of President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden's term in office? And then, do you remember when I said, ladies and gentlemen, this man is lying? And granted, that's always a fairly safe position to take when it's Tony Fauci you're talking about, but you'll recall me saying, this guy is leaving in December. This December, mark it down. If he is still in place on New Year's Day, I will personally eat Bette Midler's underwear. Well, I can report tonight that Ms. Midler can cancel her trip to Postal Annex to buy an extremely large manila envelope, for in the most unsurprising development since Liberace came out as gay, Tony Fauci now says he is, in fact, leaving in December, which stands to reason because that guy really does not want to still be in the employ of the federal government when the investigations come his way that are coming his way. I mean, look, if I was in his position, if I was the guy who had used U.S. taxpayer dollars to help our hostile communist adversary get special permission to build a bioweapon lab, and I'm not going to say allegedly because that's not an allegation, that is a matter of public record, and then use more U.S. taxpayer dollars to help that same hostile communist adversary build a bioweapon at the aforementioned bioweapon lab, allegedly, and then watch that bioweapon kill over 1 million Americans while I was busy pursuing a full-time career as a big hotshot media celebrity. Well, if I was a guy like that, who can see plain as day that the Congress is about to come under new management, and the new managers have no predisposition to believing anything I say, I would be lawyering the fuck up. And if he remains in place, his ability to lawyer up like he needs to is constrained, because when you're being investigated as a government official, you have to use government lawyers. You have to use the legal department at whatever bureau or agency it is where you work. But Fauci needs far more help than the legal counsel at the Allergy and Infectious Disease Institute can provide. In fact, if he wanted to play the thing really safe, he would defect to China the day after he retires. For all we know, he is a Chinese asset already. I mean, actually, let me amend that. We know he's a Chinese asset. We just don't know with absolute certitude whether he knows it or not. But let's call things what they are. His pattern of behavior is exactly what one would expect from an enemy saboteur who is consciously acting as an enemy saboteur. And look, if anybody thinks my language is too strong here, I don't care. In my judgment, whether wittingly or unwittingly, Dr. Anthony Fauci is an agent of the Chinese Communist Party. Needless to say, there is no version of an intellectually honest standard whereby any reasonable man or woman could declare that Donald Trump is an agent of Russia, but Tony Fauci is not an agent of China. In a world where evidence means anything, you cannot believe the former thing, but not the latter. Or else your brain is probably as broken as John Fetterman's. In fact, I think you could argue pretty convincingly that by the weight of the available evidence, Fauci looks every bit as guilty of being a Chinese saboteur as O.J. Simpson did of whacking Ron and Nicole on the morning of June 13, 1994. What's that? You say he left town immediately after the brutal murder of his estranged ex-wife and her younger male acquaintance? I'm sure it's just a bit of unfortunate timing. Well, yes, Senator Paul. Of course there was a bloody glove behind my guest house, and of course there was a trail of the blood of both victims leading directly from my vehicle up to my bedroom, because clearly, Senator Paul, I am being framed by right-wing extremists who hate science. When you attack Dr. Anthony Fauci, you slander scientific inquiry itself. The point being, Tony Fauci is going to need an Orenthal Simpson-style legal dream team if he wants to get out of this thing legally unscathed. And with the untold fistfuls of cash he's been raking in these past couple years or so, I doubt it's going to have much impact on his ability to buy up more Anthony Fauci prayer candles to display in his own office. Or, like I said, he could just take the safer route and defect over to the Chi-Coms. If you're a regular viewer, you will already know I am an ardent devotee of Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by incompetence. I hear so many people trying to quote Hanlon's razor, and they always get the wording wrong. Sometimes to fairly comical effect. Sometimes they mangle it so badly they make it mean the opposite of the thing it's supposed to mean. But I digress. Anyway, I think Tony Fauci makes a pretty interesting Hanlon's razor case study. And the question is, when you weigh the totality of the man's words and deeds, does one have any choice but to attribute them to malice? It is such a breathtakingly expansive body of work that, according to the parameters of our theorem, mere incompetence cannot provide an adequate explanation for it. And I guess we should do a quick rehash for anybody watching who might not be familiar with the blow-by-blow details of the shit show. In the beginning, back in 2015, China asks the WHO for a special dispensation so they can build a biosecurity level 4 facility. They need the special dispensation because they do not meet the minimum international requirements for building a facility like that. The dispensation could only be granted by a 5-man WHO advisory board, one of whose members is, I'll give you one guess, Senator Paul. Needless to say, the dispensation is duly given, and the Wuhan Institute of Virology gets built. Now, one of the conditions under which the dispensation was granted was that the operations of the Wuhan Institute had to be directly monitored in all respects by outside observers from biosecurity level 4 qualified countries. In this case, it was the US and France who were providing the oversight. Or they were, until France pulled its people out after less than a year and washed their hands of the entire thing. They said there's some really dodgy stuff going on here, dangerous stuff. Our advice is being ignored. We're not being provided the access that we're supposed to have. So we're out of here. We don't want to be associated with this place when the shit hits the fan. And from that point on, the only oversight of the Wuhan Institute was basically whatever Tony Fauci felt like exercising. But Fauci didn't raise any alarm bells after the French freaked out and left. If anything, he seemed positively thrilled to have those annoying baguette-eating surrender monkeys not getting all up in his business anymore, because it was almost immediately after the Frenchies pulled out that Fauci starts funneling large amounts of your tax dollars over to the Wuhan Institute to help the Wuhan Bat Lady, their nickname, not mine, turn rodent viruses into people viruses. And that's the infamous gain-of-function research that Fauci so enjoys smugly lying about when he is testifying under oath before Congress. Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about. First of all, it wasn't gain-of-function research. Second of all, even if it was gain-of-function, it was in North Carolina and not Wuhan. Yeah, you sure owned that guy, Tony. No, I didn't do the bad thing you're accusing me of, and even if I did, your description was incorrect in one minor detail, so ha! And then, since why build a bioweapon, allegedly, unless you're going to try it out, the great communist Chinese Wuhan Kung Flu coronavirus of 2019 duly arrives on our fair shores, and what does Tony Fauci do? The same thing he does about everything else. He lies. He spends months on end clinging to this absurd theory that no, this virus doesn't have anything to do with the bioweapon lab that I helped China build with your tax dollars. It actually originated right across the street from there. Imagine that. At the wet market, because some dumb Chinaman undercooked his pangolin or his fruit bat soup or whatever the hell it was. Oh well, these things happen, right? And to their eternal shame, a lot of people believed that bullshit. In fact, speaking of people who should feel eternally shameful, I think CNN actually tried a few weeks ago to resurrect the pangolin fruit bat origin story. Who else but CNN, right? You thought everybody abandoned that theory years ago because it was always very self-evidently stupid. But CNN, they kept that pangolin candle burning, saving it for a rainy day when their pal Tony needed some help getting the heat off of him. And it really is astounding to consider that over 2.5 years later, millions of fatalities across the entire globe, the whole world economy disrupted. The effects of this virus are going to keep reverberating for decades. And there has been zero serious investigation of what should be one of the biggest news stories in all of history by the performance artists who are supposed to be our news organizations. If you want to read serious investigative journalism on the origins of this virus that has permanently altered all of our lives, you almost have to go on the dark web to get it. The people doing the investigating, they have long since been thrown off all the major social media platforms. They've been blackballed by the mainstream fake news media. You'd think they were child pornographers with the way they've basically been disappeared and excluded from polite society. And all for the grievous sin of wanting to find out the truth and report it to the public. Oh, we can't have that. That's crazy talk. And hey, since this video is probably getting banned anyway, let's talk briefly about the last video of mine that got banned, that being the one in which I referred to masks as religious talismans in the episode title. For we got the news today that YouTube has removed any and all mention of masks from the community guidelines. So whereas yesterday I would not have been allowed to say, your stupid face diaper doesn't do anything to keep you safe, today I can say, your stupid face diaper doesn't do anything to keep you safe. But then what about the banned video? Shall I take this as an invitation to re-upload it without fear of sanction? Or is it in some database of banned videos that can never again see the light of day? And what about all the people who got banned and suspended and demonetized over the stupid mask policy? Would it be so much to ask that YouTube actually issue some sort of mea culpa for once and say, yeah, that policy was dumb. We got it wrong. We're sorry we sanctioned our creators for something that shouldn't have been sanctionable. And to show our contrition, we're going to, anything? What kind of message does it send when you just quietly rescind the bad policy and hope nobody notices? Does that do anything to prevent your users from thinking your content policies are arbitrary, capricious, wrong-headed, and 100% politically motivated? Spoiler alert, it does not. Social media companies will come to rue the day when they decided to make themselves the self-appointed arbiters of truth, and they will especially rue the decision to appoint themselves the referees of medical science. When you start silencing actual medical doctors and shutting down legitimate scientific inquiry on a matter of pressing importance to public health, you have put yourself in a very odious place from which it is extremely difficult to come back. Social media and the internet more broadly should have enabled us to do the required inquiry, to have the required debates, to settle on the best course of action, to bring together as much brain power as possible to solve the problem, and to do it all far more quickly than we could have done it 20 or 30 or 50 years ago. But what did we get in the actual event? Fucking censorship, fucking bureaucracy, and fucking ass covering. We probably could have solved the thing quicker if there was no internet at all. And the big tech oligarch assholes will have to figure out a way to live with that. But I'm sure they'll manage. And we will leave it there for tonight. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Have a pleasant tomorrow. See you Friday. Do not comply. Masks are stupid and do not work. Get off my lawn.